Hey everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi Facebook Live every Monday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. I am your host, Dan Z. Happy to join you once again to talk about some Star Wars and get your minds going. We got a big show tonight. We are, of course, going to look at, well, the beginning of our Star Wars Coffee with Kenobi book club. We're going to break down different chapters different Star Wars books and make them more digestible. I want you to feel like you are a part of what goes on in my classroom. We're going to pretend like the textbook is Star Wars related. So I am very excited to do that with you. Let me fix this. Got a little bit of crazy stuff going on with the hair these days. Hello, Mary. Hello, LJ, Jim, Blake, Eric. Who else is on here already? Tyler, Christopher, Kurt, and Mintas, and of course Mason Z. Good to see all of you out here tonight. Very excited to chat some Star Wars with you. We've got two big things going on for the show, as you know. First off, we are going to do your top 5 Star Wars memories. I had a hard time picking this. Hello, Aaron. Good to see you, bro. Awesome to see Aaron, the co-host of Star Wars Reactions here on Facebook Live. Jim, good to see you. LJ teasing everybody, which we like. Mary, hello. Hopefully your phone battery will work out. I agree. And we got a little bit of Blake antics. There you go, Blake. He's right here. Good deal. It's fun that you do that to an English teacher. It's really good stuff. I know it's kind of a work in progress. But last week I had like the whole chin thing, and Corey said it looked like I was eating a pudding cup. So yes, the whole Jedi Council is here. We've got our usual cast of characters, which is really fantastic. All right, so tonight we've got our Star Wars memories. By the way, Kurt had something really funny that he mentioned before we actually went live. He made his top 5 soda list. Now, the reason that's funny is because on our most recent CWK prover, we came up with our top 5 sodas. And it sounds a little silly, and I think we needed a little bit of silly. We did top 5 cereals before, which was a big hit. And then on the top 5 soda thing, I was really, really proud of the fact that I didn't have, yes, no storms tonight, Paul, which is a very good thing, for sure. The droid attack on the Wookiees. Interesting. We're gonna get to all that stuff. So I had like a list ready of stuff to talk about, and then I kept changing it for tonight because there's a lot of great Star Wars memories that I have from these movies and the books and the comics and everything like that. So, hey, Adam, good to see you, man. Very good to see you. He says hi to everyone else. Eric says it froze. Hopefully it didn't freeze on your end. We seem to be doing well on my side of the studio, so I'm just going to keep letting things roll. Okay. Very good. So here we go. It is freezing up. Maybe I can see if other people are on. I don't think anybody else is on. So we'll just kind of see how it goes. All right, so tonight we've got some interesting stuff planned again. We've got your top 5 Star Wars memories. And we've got also the beginning of the Rise of Skywalker book chat. So now I'm going to skillfully text everyone in my family and say, please don't be on the internet now so that we can do our Facebook Live show. So we're going to see how that works out. Is it breaking up for everybody? Any luck? Okay. I think it's recovering. All right, well, I'm just going to do it. And of course, not only do we record the show live, but we also do it where after this is done, I put it on Facebook and I put it on YouTube channel and I put it on Instagram. So very good. We're going to have a good show tonight. I am excited. Let's jump into our top 5s. We're going to go again with our top 5 favorite things. No, I'm sorry, top 5 favorite Star Wars memories. So this is a really tough one for me because that encapsulates so much, so many different things about Star Wars that I love. I came up with like 25 or 30 things, and I try to narrow it down to 5. Of course, if it makes you feel better, these can change as time goes on. Naturally, nothing is set in stone, but just how you feel just for tonight's show. So we're going to go ahead and do it. My number 5 And I tried to pick stuff from all over the spectrum. My number 5, Star Wars memory, is the first episode of the Siege of Mandalore when Ahsoka says Rex, I'll race you to the surface. And she jumps out of the Republic gunship against Rex and puts on this incredible aerial display of Jedi acrobatics, force abilities, gymnastics, and just confidence. And when she finally makes it to the surface, it was a gasp moment. So when I'm picking my Star Wars memories list, it's the stuff that gave me the most adrenaline or the most impact. I had the most visceral reaction to what was going on in the actual episode or movie or moment, whatever. So the ones I'm picking were kind of like the big adrenaline, get me excited, fired up moments as well. And remind me at the end to give my top 5s because I will certainly do that one too. Okay, what are some ones that other people have? Number 5 for your Star Wars memories. So LJ said, oh, cool. LJ had the same number 5 as me, Ahsoka's superhero landing. It was truly epic and very exciting and awe-inspiring. What about other people? What other people have for their number 5? My honorable mention, I'll mention one of my honorable mentions now, is the great sequence in Return of the Jedi where it looks like Luke and our heroes are going to be fed to the Sarlacc pit. Luke gives that salute to R2-D2, jumps off the skip, lands on a diving board, and flips up, catches lightsaber. We get the epic, heroic Star Wars theme hero music. And I know that's really high on Mason's list as well. Okay, Tyler says, Anakin's confession to Padme about what he did in Attack of the Clones. I just watched it recently. It hit me way harder than I remember. You know what? That one's great. We watched that one in our house this week as well. His confrontation with the same people, truly, truly powerful. Number 5, Jim says, Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order. All of mine tend to have a lot of emotional resonance with me. That's good. And it should. That's a very powerful one. That could easily be on my list as well. It really is a sucker punch, even when you watch it years later. Blake says, end of episode 3 of The Mandalorian. The showdown in the streets of the Mandos saving the day had me getting loud in my small apartment. That's cool. That is very, very cool. I love that very much. Ross says, waiting in line for the midnight showing of the Phantom Menace. Oh, that's cool. Ross took a different approach. He is actually looking at a memory surrounding it, not just a moment that of the actual mythology itself. I like that. Mita says, one of my favorite memories was when Kenobi battled General Grievous and he managed to keep his cool in the end. Oh, I agree. I love that one too. When he says, so uncivilized, and then he just tosses the blaster aside after he defeats him, because that was a pretty powerful thing. Mary also says Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Temple, for sure. That's good. And then Eric said, the Death Star attack in A New Hope, such a classic scene. Oh, yeah, the trench run. That one's probably going to show up pretty soon as well. Oh, Kylo Mason says, using my wife's Facebook account, when Kylo Ren fights Luke on Crate. Awesome. Good choice, Mason. You know I love that one, for sure. Colby says, Han and Ben in The Rise of Skywalker. Too much to get into here, but it's perfect. You know, I almost had that on mine. I definitely had a reaction to that when I saw that one in the theaters. That's a great one. I was definitely thinking of that. Paul says, being a Vader fan, I would say the birth of Vader after the fight with Obi-Wan. That's, you know, you could just have a top 5 memorable moments, and they're all Revenge of the Sith, Paul. So I agree. That's a really good one. Christopher says, watching The Empire Strikes Back in theaters in the 90s when they re-released. Yes, that's right. 1997. That Hoth battle got me hooked. It made me remember a lost memory watching The Empire Strikes Back with my father. All I could recall was the colors orange and blue, and some dude getting stuck in a block. And we know exactly what that one is. Good. Thank you for that. Very good. All right, my number 4 is the moment in The Force Awakens when that quad jumper gets blown up, and then Rey points and says, we'll take the garbage. And all of a sudden they play the heroes theme, a different version of it, and they run towards the Millennium Falcon. So, you know, from 2005 until, you know, The Force Awakens came out in theaters in 2015, we really didn't see the Millennium Falcon on the big screen. So we knew we were promised getting to see our old heroes and our old friends that we love from the original trilogy. And then when you get to see the Millennium Falcon, for some reason that moment just gives me goosebumps. In fact, just looking at that picture now gives me that great goosebump moment because the Falcon's back. And I love the Millennium Falcon, which is not a character, by the way. Mita says the sand porg versus Chewbacca. Oh, the sad sand. The sad porg versus Chewbacca. I love it. That's a great one too. Very, very memorable. I think because you're so worried that something's going to happen, but no, it's just cute. Tyler says, "Kid, I'm about to let everyone in on the secret." Ooh, yeah, nice. Kanan revealing himself to be a Jedi, such a great cheer-worthy moment. I love that moment. That's a great one too, from the first episode of Rebels. Jim's number 4 is Padme's ruminations in Revenge of the Jedi, or Revenge of the Sith, and like the sound and the music on that is so powerful. Thank you for that. That's a good one. Mary says, "Hot and Carbonite, I love you." I know that's tremendous too. I debated that one. I'm going to talk about Bespin later, but I did debate that one too. I mean, we're all going to see these and say, "Oh yeah, that one's great. That one's great." I mean, it's hard to narrow it down to 5. It really is. Eric says, "When Luke tells the Emperor he's failed, I'm a Jedi like my father before me." Yeah, that one's pretty powerful too. That emotional resonance that taps into so much what we love about this saga. Blake, the end of the final Clone Wars arc with Vader. Oh, nice. Nice. Yeah, that's a very recent one, but that one definitely had a big impact on us. Colby's got a big one here. Obi-Wan and Anakin when Obi-Wan is leaving for Utapau in Revenge of the Sith. Anakin's honesty and Obi-Wan's appreciation of Anakin. Years of friendship, brotherhood, and genuine love are on full display. It makes the tragic events that are to come even more heartbreaking. I agree. Very, very powerful stuff. LJ says, the Battle of the Heroes is a fantastic duel with a ton of emotion. We've been hearing that theme a lot in Anakin versus Obi-Wan, and been fighting with lightsabers. Mason and I have when we've been listening to that one, and Duel of the Fates, so that's a good one. And back to what Colby had said, there's an emotional punch that is a very, very slow build to it, and I think that is one of the reasons why it's so powerful to us. Kurt says, doing this on the fly, but still, I'm sure it'll be good. The opening sequence of Revenge of the Sith is amazing, and that has become my new test for surround sound. When people come over, because we've got a wonderful, basically a little home theater in our basement, and we put, I don't know why I'm pointing as if you can see what I'm looking at. We put the speaker wire behind the drywall so that it hides. We've got 7.1 surround sound, this great subwoofer, and I always show Kurt at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith because of how powerful that part is. Let's see. Chris says, when Sabine realizes she was being way too hard on herself as she is being trained and obtains the Darksaber. That is an awesome one as well. Yeah. Very, very good. Paul says, Kylo Ren fooling Snoke about his intentions. Ooh, I love that scene. That whole sequence almost became my number 1. But then I thought, well, I'm going to try to vary up the movies and stuff like that. But it definitely was really close to being my top one. All right, very good. So let's get rid of this one. My number 3 is A World Between Worlds in Star Wars Rebels. So, the moment when we realized something completely brand new about the Force, about the mythology of Star Wars and how it works, and the galaxy, and time, and space. It is called A World Between Worlds for a reason. And when we get to see the return of Ahsoka Tano, I yelled audibly when I saw that. And I got to see it a couple days before it came out, so I had to keep, myself quiet so I didn't ruin it for anybody. And I was just thrilled. I thought it was so impactful, and I didn't expect it. These moments in Star Wars, you could have easily put when we first meet the child, but these moments in Star Wars when you're surprised by something major that happens in the story, in the mythology, and what it means to Star Wars as a whole is unforgettable. And I just love that impact so much. Well, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. Is a very, very powerful, important one. Mita says, when Ahsoka stood before Vader and said, I am no Jedi. Yeah, that one is really, really powerful too. I agree with that. I love that. That's from Twilight of the Apprentice. Jim's number 3 is Obi-Wan versus Anakin and Mustafar. I still have that music in my head since we were talking about it a couple of announcements ago. Tyler says, Han and Kylo / Ben's conversations in The Rise of Skywalker. Both actors give it their all. It's one of the most emotional scenes in the saga. It is great when you heard, hey kid, and you just knew Harrison was going to show up. Just the best. Eric says Ahsoka's return in Rebels. Yeah, that's great when she's revealed to be Fulcrum. Good call. Blake says Yoda raising Luke's X-Wing from the swamp, followed by his classic line, that is why you fail. That's wonderful too. John Williams' music really sells that one. Mary says the entire Mortis arc, especially Anakin getting the glimpse of the future and the saving of Ahsoka, World Between Worlds ties to this as well. I couldn't decide. It's hard. Isn't it great that we have this story that it's so hard to pick what our favorites actually are? Amazing. Paul says the entire opening sequence to the first episode of The Mandalorian. Oh, that's interesting. And then you hear like the sound effects of the spurs walking too, which kind of adds to the gunslinger feel. JC Poe, welcome to the show, JC. Yoda pulling Luke's ship up. Very good. All right, that's one we just heard from our buddy Blake a few moments ago. So good call. Tyler Johnson says it's too late for me, son. Luke talking to Vader. That one is like a sucker punch because you actually hear sadness in Vader, and you don't through that helmet. You don't often hear that. LJ, a third one to say Yoda lifting the X-wing on Dagobah. I love that. Colby says Luke and Rey in the Jedi tree in the cave. The Last Jedi, of course. Their performances are captivating. Luke is at his darkest, riddled with guilt. Rey refuses to let him stay there. Oh, I like that. Rey refusing to let him stay there. Very good. We're going to talk about Rey and darkness very soon when we look at the first 3 chapters of The Rise of Skywalker. Brian says the unexpected, the surprise. You were so right. I enjoyed the Mandalorians in flight and the Mandalorian. Awesome. Yeah, in episode 3, when we actually see a bunch of Mandalorians and they use their jetpacks on screen, very, very powerful. Good call, Brian. Blake, LJ says Blake and JC stole my thunder. Well, that's all right. We all have different ways. And often this happens when I'm doing a show with Jeff McGee when we do our top 5s. We'll have the same one, but we'll have a different approach to it, which I think is fun. All right, very good. Okay, so my number 2. So I agonized over 2 and 1 for a long time. But ultimately I picked Vader confronting Luke. Like I talked about, is my favorite scene in The Empire Strikes Back. When Vader says, "The Force is with you, young Skywalker, but you are not a Jedi yet." And they face each other like I have in the picture there. It's before they turn on their lightsabers. There's no music. The emotional impact of that, him finally facing Vader. In his mind, he thinks he's ready, but I'm probably sure that deep down inside he knows he's way over his head. And he is at that point. So it's great. Could have been my number 1, but I try to be consistent with what I've said over the years. Christopher says, when the Jawas actually shot the Mandalorian off of the crawler. That was like, that episode was crazy to me. It was just a very, very different tone. People loved it. I know my buddy Drew Taylor, that was his favorite one, or one of his favorite ones. And it was just really, really funny. Sorry about that. I'm not used to having longer hair, so I'm trying to keep it out of my face. There we go. So we've got some more. Good deal. Mita says the Siege of Mandalore arc, it wraps with the Clone Wars story beautifully, thus leading us into the original trilogy. Yes, it's one of my favorites in all of animation and Star Wars storytelling for sure. Twilight of the Apprentice, Eric says, some of the best Star Wars television ever. I agree. It's beautiful storytelling, and it very much stands on its own too, and it kind of ties in a lot of different aspects of Star Wars together. You've got original trilogy, prequel trilogy, and then Rebels, and a little bit of Clone Wars kind of too. Colby says, Luke and Vader after Luke surrenders on Endor in Return of the Jedi. There's something about Luke calling Vader father. And let me get that back up there again. And Vader calling Luke son. It is powerful. Luke is confident, under control, and Vader is growing more conflicted with every passing moment. Yeah, there's a lot of dramatic tension. And Colby, did you always feel that way, or did it kind of slowly evolve as we learn more and more about Star Wars? Because I think that's interesting, how that impact played in '83 versus now. So that's a good one. I love that one too, because again, you hear a real performance from James Earl Jones, how he gets the emotion out of that. Tyler says Yoda's speech before he lifts the X-Wing, as great as the X-Wing lift is, I feel that his speech about the Force is even more powerful. I agree. I've used that one a lot for a lot of different things. It's very effective. Jim's number 2 is Jyn watching her father's message. Felicity Jones's acting performance was so compelling, and that scene breaks my heart every time. Jim, that scene is really sad. I mean, Felicity Jones is a major Hollywood star. She's been nominated for Oscars, and that one definitely is definitely like kind of a gut punch to the emotions. Mary says Luke telling Rey, never be afraid of who you are. I love that one. That's an excellent message to pass on to my own children. Paul says seeing and recognizing the Death Star and the Rise of Skywalker and watching Rey walk through the room where Luke and Vader battled. I believe that's where that happened. I believe so too. Yeah, there's a lot of emotional weight because there's history in there. And especially if you consider the Force power of psychometry, where you can touch an object and learn about the person who had it or the events surrounding that object, really adds to it as well. What else do we have? Wow, these are going longer than I thought, but this is great. Blake says the Obi-Wan versus Anakin duel, especially that "you were my brother" line, actually makes me think of my. It always makes me think of my actual brother and how much he means to me. Yeah, I agree. It's the family connections are what makes Star Wars really hit us, especially when you come to it through that particular lens. LJ says Kanan sacrificing himself. Oh, yeah. That one is like you knew it was coming, but it still didn't make it any easier. Kurt says the Vader sequence at the end of Rogue One. I can't believe I forgot that one. That one's great, too. Tyler says, you took mine, but I'll switch to Yoda going from odd creature to Jedi Master in Luke's realization, followed by Yoda dropping wisdom on Luke about the Force, ending with "I'm not afraid" from Luke, and Yoda's powerful, you will be. Good. And Tyler, even if I did take yours, feel free to chime in because you'll have a much different way to explain it than I will, and I would love to hear your thoughts for sure. Christopher says the announcement of Clone Wars saved in those trailers. That was great. And I know I've said this before, but I was in the room in San Diego at Comic-Con when they announced that, and there was so much electricity and excitement in the air. I posted a video, and it got thousands of views like instantly because people were so excited to see what was going on in that room. Colby says, I've been captivated by it since '83 for different reasons over the years. Oh, cool. Thanks, Colby. I was hoping you would circle back on that, so I appreciate your insights on that. Very cool. JC says, the throne room ceremony in A New Hope ends the movie on the ultimate high. I agree. And that throne room music from John Williams is what we used when we got married, and they said you may kiss the bride, boom, and then we walked out the church and they played that music, and it was great. I mean, that was a great moment, obviously, for a lot of reasons. Tyler says confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi personified in the carbon freeze chamber. Oh, that's nice. I like that. That's very, very good. All right, time for my number one. So bring out your heavy hitters now, everybody. These are your top moments that hit you the most. Mine, and Mason already explained this really well before, is when Luke faces the First Order in The Last Jedi. The music about the spark and Luke coming back and coming through the cave, the Resistance, and seeing his reunion with Leia, his wink to 3PO, and everyone standing up kind of mythically staring at him as he walks out and faces everybody, and they fire all their weapons at him, and he just brushes off his shoulder. I mean, I can't even tell you. I got to see that in Chicago at this movie premiere, like a press thing, and we were cheering. We're talking about. I mean, obviously, huge Star Wars fan, and a lot of the press were, but some people are just press covering a new movie review, and everyone was just screaming like Muhammad Ali or Michael Jordan or Chris Bryant or somebody was doing something heroic on their respective field. And I'll just never forget the narrative waiting for so long since 1983 to see a Luke Skywalker moment. Just electric. Just electric. Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate that, dude. Very much so. Mita says, not a movie memory, but this is one of my favorites. Back at New York Comic-Con, I'm guessing. Yeah, I had a chance to meet Ashley Eckstein. She even remembered me from Star Wars Weekends from the previous year. She was incredibly kind and a delight to talk to. Minta, that's great. That does not surprise me. Ashley Eckstein seems to have like a photographic memory. I swear she's so good at remembering people, and not only the person, but kind of who they are. And she's a very genuine person. So I'm glad you got that because Minta, I agree, she's awesome. And of course, you remember you're an awesome person too. Tyler says, Anakin and Obi-Wan flying their starfighters to battle over Coruscant. Now says it best. Though this is the end of the Age of Heroes, it has saved its best for last. Oh, good line. Very good line, Tyler. Yeah, I love that part too. The sound, the music, everything. Number one is Jin sacrifice on the beaches of Scarif. It's my favorite scene in all of cinema because of how much it impacts me emotionally. Wow. Oof. Yeah, you hit a lot of the good emotional beats from Rogue One for sure, Jim. And I expected that you would because I know how powerful that movie was for you and for so many of us. All right, Paul says the scene where Palpatine reveals he has been all the voices in your head, and you can hear his historic Sith through all the episodes. Yeah, and that one, we're going to talk about that actually really, really soon, too, through the novel. LJ says, not an actual Star Wars moment, but mine is taking my daughter to see The Force Awakens. It was her first time seeing Star Wars on the big screen. Took me back to when my dad took me to see Empire. I got choked up in the theater. So LJ was just talking about seeing it with his family, which was really great. And I was talking about when I saw The Rise of Skywalker with my family. Of course, my wife and I went to the premiere. Amazing for all kinds of reasons. Then we all went and saw it a couple days later in town here. And it was Mason's first Star Wars movie on the big screen, and that was a really, really special moment. It was great. And all 5 of us there was great. Eric says Vader's number 1 is no, I'm your father. Yep, gives me goosebumps. Yep, I can't believe that hasn't come up yet, but that's obviously extremely important. Christopher, very, very gracious. The Coffee with Kenobi podcast, the amazing interactions with guests, the actors, authors, the fan interactions and discussion. Thank you and the whole CWK team. Christopher, that is so wonderful and gracious. Thank you so much, brother. I'm glad we can help to be a part of this wonderful community. I'm so glad that you're a part of it here with us. Thank you so much, my friend. LJ says, actual Star Wars moment, Luke tossing his saber away in Return of the Jedi. Yep, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. So good. Colby says, that is why you fail and the Empire Strikes Back. Luke can't get beyond his own failure and Yoda refuses to let him get in his own way. Yoda's message is simple. It's not about you. Believe in something greater. Yep. Very, Colby, good choice. Very, very rich. Mary says, 2 personal favorite memories. Seeing the original trilogy, taking her very close nephew for the prequels, and then seeing the prequels with him. The best one, introducing the Star Wars galaxy to my son through Clone Wars when he was 7, including Star Wars weekends and many celebrations. I love it. Mason says the trench run, and I'm so glad that you chimed in with this, Mason. The trench run is epic. And every time I watch it, especially the first time you saw it when you were little, you jumped up and down and cheered the whole trench run because of the adrenaline and the excitement. And that, I think, is the emotion that George Lucas wanted us to feel. So I'm so glad that one had a big impact on you, my little buddy. Kurt says, it has to be the trench run from A New Hope. It was what hooked me originally and was the biggest moment for a long time. Well, Kurt, my son Mason feels the same way. Brian says, I love The Last Jedi. It's awesome to hear so many of the great moments that came from that movie. It gets a lot of hate, but I love it. I love it too. It's top 3 of my favorite Star Wars movies ever. Minta's honorable mention meeting Sam Witwer at Boston Comic Con. My fiance and I worked on etching him while he loved it. Cool. Yeah, he's a great guy. He's very charismatic, which is great. Eric says, are you from Massachusetts? Am I? No, I'm actually from Illinois, unless you're asking someone else. But I have been to Boston twice, and I think it's an awesome place. All right, so everybody, that was great. That was so much fun. We really got even more out of these than we usually do, and actually talked quite a bit longer than I expected. But be sure to feel free to chime in throughout. But we're gonna change gears a little bit, and so go ahead and grab your copy of The Rise of Skywalker. As promised, this is the CWK book study. We are going to look through this book in detail like I would in my classroom. I'm going to point out key things I think are important, maybe how it's written, things like that. Again, the purpose is twofold. One, to make Star Wars books not feel like homework so you can just leisurely enjoy them. And also to kind of get our insights together and talk about them like we're in the classroom. Because a lot of people say, I wish I could be in your classroom when you talk about Star Wars. And, well, this is your chance to kind of make that happen. So we're going to have a lot of fun. So here we go. Let me get a drink of water here, and then we're gonna do some talking about this book. All right. So today is chapter 1. Chapters 1, 2, and 3. It's actually, I spent probably 3 hours getting ready for this 15-minute segment because I'm treating it like I would my classroom. So I want to point out key things. So again, chapters 1, 2, and 3 of The Rise of Skywalker by Ray Carson. A really, really important novel. Now, this is going to be one of our challenges when we're looking at this thing. Try not to think about the movie. Now, I know that's difficult. So unlearn what you have learned, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because if you really want to look at this thing as a novel and kind of get the literature out of it, then we have to kind of just focus on that alone. So that's what we're going to do. So a couple things. Feel free to follow along in the book if you have it, or just listen. I'm fine with either, of course, whatever works best for you. On page 4, which is the first, actually chapter 1, beginning, we talk about Rey's connection in the Force. Rey inhaled through her nose and sent her awareness into the void. Peace and calm were key, Leia always said. She reached, she searched. She felt the breeze on her cheeks. She smelled loamy soil, damp from the recent rain. And the reason I bring this up is the connection to nature and the Force is very important. The Force, as Obi-Wan says, is an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, and binds the galaxy together. And Those are important because it talks about the fact that the Force is spiritual and it's also from nature. So these descriptions of nature, and earlier up in the beginning, they talk about the lush rainforest of Agent Claus teeming with life and how she's able to connect to reptiles and insects, and just the sounds that they make is very soothing to her. And I think that's important because she's more at peace when she's connected with everything and everyone. And that's important because, of course, her little pull to the dark side that we talk about very soon, that is a separate thing that tries to separate. So the Force, the light side of the Force, connects, brings everything and everyone together, including nature. The dark side does the opposite. All right. One of the things that Leia does, though, is when she's frustrated. Let me try to find it here. It's a description of Rey trying to focus and use the things that Leia tried to connect to. Rey frowns. She murmurs. There are hints, I think, here to the dark side. And I'll try to find one. Okay, here we go. In the middle of page 6. Rey frowned. Leia didn't need patience. She could have made anyone do anything she wanted with the power of the Force. Surely she'd been tempted. So, the reason this kind of alludes to dark side stuff is because Rey is an imagining, because of Leia's charisma and experience and the way she's able to get along with people, she could actually make anyone do anything she wanted with the Force. In other words, force her own will, which would be very un-Jedi-like, of course. Very un-Jedi-like. And that's not something that uses the light side of the Force would ever do. So the fact that she even considers that for a moment doesn't show that Rey is bad or evil. It shows that she's human, which is why she's relatable. But it also shows the fact that there's a very, very small little way for the dark side to kind of creep into her psyche a little bit. Because I will break my rule real quickly. I feel like the book does a better job of establishing that as far as like this mysterious thing with Rey. Because in The Last Jedi, Rey learns that she's strong enough on her own and to trust in her instincts, and that she is good. She can overcome temptation, and she can be centered, and she very much is. But that kind of goes away for this novel. So we're going to see kind of where that carries us and how, if it's consistent or not. Tyler says he's enjoying the novel that's giving these scenes more room to breathe. The movie moves at such a kinetic pace, it's hard to focus. It extends scenes and gives more time and motives with the characters. I agree, which is exactly what this sequence does. So Rey discusses with Leia about her training, and I think it's great. Like, there's a really great scene in chapter 1 that talks about a memory that Leia has with her brother when they're training, right and back on the same planet on Agent Claus, shortly after the results of what happens at the end of Return of the Jedi, which is really, really cool. Let me see. I've taken some notes here, and Mason actually drew a little elephant for me as well. And there's some key things about her training and what it triggers for her. So let's go ahead. If you have your book in front of you, there's this great scene on page 8 and 9 where Luke is training Leia again to meditate, to balance. He's trying to get her to basically stand on her hands, like he does. And while he's teaching her, he keeps saying, when I was on Dagobah, this is what we did. And I think Leia's a little annoyed. I mean, her brother's coming across a little bit smug, and he's doing it on purpose because he wants to get under her skin. He wants to try to goad her into being frustrated, which is really, really clever. And in fact, it even explains this right here. Let me see if I can find it. Now, a lot of teachers write in their books. I'm probably one of the few English teachers you'll ever meet doesn't write in their books because I can't deface a book. I just can't do that. It's just one of the things that people kind of tease me for in the department, and I'm okay with that because I just can't write in my book. All right, let's see. Okay, Luke had said, his voice smug, when I did this on Dagobah, Yoda was sitting on my feet. He said that a lot back then. When I did this on Dagobah, it was obnoxious and completely unhelpful, so Leia reminded him, you're being obnoxious and completely unhelpful, which is so good, And there's a great little paragraph here I'm going to put. He was trying to provoke her to teach her a lesson about anger and impatience and all that nonsense. Luke had forgotten that his student was a superb strategist who had already benefited from a royal education. Leia would not be provoked. So what does Leia do? She ends up floating. She hears the sound of a tiny insect, it says, rubbing its mandibles together, whistling a sweet high song. And when she hears that, it helps her to focus on the sound and just be at peace. And then she ends up raising herself off the ground, completely floating upside down, feet pointed to the sky. She lifts her arms up and holds them parallel to the ground. And then eventually she falls, and Luke is agape when this happens. And he says, you're going to make me a better teacher. Not the response that she expected. What do you mean? He says, don't get me wrong, your lightsaber craft is coming along, but you do other things naturally. What I mean is you're exceptional, just different. And then we get this powerful little thing that Ray Carson provides. Then he had smiled, with that wide farm boy grin that had stayed with him all the way up until the night of Ben's betrayal. I love that. Again, shows the real pain that Luke has in all this, and why he runs off. So LJ says, if getting under people's skin is a force power, then I'm a Jedi Master. That's outstanding. Minta says, Leia's flashback with her training with Luke is well written. It gives you an idea how she adapted quickly to her abilities while putting him in his place. I agree. I learned so much about Leia over the past couple of months through a lot of different projects, and this book certainly helps that. So a good call, Minta, for sure. Rey's greatest fear is on page 15. I realize this is going to take a lot longer, but that's fine. I'll just hit the keynotes. On page 15, it says, there it was, her greatest fear, talking about Rey, that these people she'd come to care for so much would be disappointed in her, maybe even hurt by her. She'd been alone for so long, she couldn't bear the thought of losing any of them. So that makes sense. I mean, if you haven't had, much growing up, and then you get this incredible family, naturally you're going to be afraid to lose them. But of course, fear is not the way to go about doing things, and Rey learns that through time. In chapter 2, we switch and we get the opening of the movie, because of course the movie starts with Kylo, but we don't get Kylo until chapter 2 here, and it's all about him trying to seek out the Wayfinder. We see a little bit about his rivalry with Hux, which is kind of one-sided. I think to Kylo, Hux is like an irritant, but Hux really can't stand him. He can't stand him at all. So I think it's really, really neat to see this background. And they talk about Kylo Ren and the Stormtroopers kind of going through all these individuals have chosen to protect where Vader's from in his castle. Hey, Dennis, good to see you, man. Welcome to the show, of course, buddy. I hope you had a good birthday, too, the other day. So they talk about how Kylo Ren is beautiful to watch as he's mowing everybody down, all these Sith cultists. Let me see the exact name they give them. I don't really see it right here. I'm sure I wrote it down somewhere. But he makes it through because he's on a mission, naturally. He wants to find out what's wrong. And I learned something. You learned something about Kylo Ren in chapter 2. You learn, and it's kind of reinforced in the movie, I would say, but you learn that he's determined to be the big dog. He can't possibly imagine or allow, I should say, anyone to be more powerful than him in the galaxy, which is why he's so angry about the Emperor. And that's why it says he's gone mad. Flames of rebellion burn across the galaxy, and Ren chases a ghost. So, and Kylo even admits, internally, that this thing with the Emperor is throwing him off because he wants to see. He feels like he's been subservient his whole life. There's this great thing. Let me see if I can find it here. There's also a great thing with the Webbish Bog, which is on page 20, which is where it's not in the movie, but this massive bald head, and across one shoulder was a second creature with long, spidery tentacles. The two were locked in symbiosis. Kylo sensed the giant's pain, as though it were a slave to the spidery being that clung to it, yet neither of it could survive alone. So this is the creature, the entity that pops out and tells Kylo Ren, hey, this is where Vader's Wayfinder is. So Eric says, is that Kylo trying to live up to his parents' legacy? Well, there is something about his parents' legacy that I'm trying to find, and I think I wrote it down. Oh, page 26. Kylo Ren's pet peeve. I think that's what it is. Here it is. I think this answers what you're talking about, Eric. It says, Kylo Ren was the supreme leader of the First Order. Before that, he'd been the leader of the Knights of Ren. Before that, he'd been the presumptive heir to the Skywalker legacy and the son of a princess. So he'd been subjected to false flattery and sycophantic compliments his whole life, and he refused to give them power, then and especially now. Who are you to speak to me? He says to this creature who ends up being, of course, the Emperor, right? Yeah, Leader Ren will answer to no one. Exactly. So I think that what I get from this is that Kylo Ren, for all his power, for all his might, for all his focus and determination, deep down inside, and I think we see this in The Force Awakens, deep down inside, he's still that insecure little boy who's trying to prove himself, and he feels like he doesn't want to get any kind of credit because of who his parents are, who his uncle is. He wants to make his own way, and maybe he's not convinced that all the accolades and who he is are because of him. And he's almost like he's always trying to prove himself. He's got a massive chip on his shoulder. If you hear a noise in the background, that is my dog barking. So I apologize for that. All right. Eric says that gets touched on the Kylo Ren comic series. It does. It absolutely does. I thought of that as well. All right. So then turn to page 27. This is probably the most important thing. And we're going to get to, we'll just fly through chapter 3 really quickly. But at the end of chapter 2, you get a sequence that I think tells us once and for all who and what the Emperor is in the Rise of Skywalker. So as you may know, or you may not, this is how canon works in Star Wars and literature. If something happens in the novel, it's canonical, unless something supersedes it or overrides it in the movie. So if this is in here and it's not addressed in the movie, you consider this is the canonical Star Wars. At least that's how I'm interpreting what I've heard, read, and seen over the years. All right. So on the top of 27, Kylo Ren has just encountered the Emperor on Exegol. You know the creepy sequence, the very Frankenstein monster-esque. It says, the Emperor's eyes were filmed over with milky blindness and vials punctured his neck. All the vials were empty of liquid save one, which was nearly depleted. Kylo peered closer. He'd seen this apparatus before, too, when he'd studied the Clone Wars as a boy. The liquid flowing into the living nightmare before him was fighting a losing battle to sustain the Emperor's putrid flesh. What could you give me? Kylo asked. Emperor Palpatine lived after a fashion, and Kylo could feel in his very bones that this clone body sheltered the Emperor's actual spirit. It was an imperfect vessel, though, unable to contain his immense power. It couldn't last much longer. All right, so there you go. Kylo says it's a clone body sheltering the Emperor's actual spirit. So somehow, at the end of the Return of the Jedi, I mean, we know the Sith has powers and abilities that many seem considered to be unnatural. I'm kind of botching the original quote a little bit, but that quote is actually in this novel on the page before. So that's to me, that's confirmation that the Emperor is a clone, but the body is a clone. That's why it can't stay alive for very long. The Emperor is so incredibly powerful, and his spirit somehow is the only Sith is able to take his essence and put it inside. But he doesn't do it very well. I mean, well, it must work pretty well because he stays alive for over 31 years. But he's constantly deteriorating, and they have to keep putting these liquids in and using clone technology to keep him alive. So Kylo knew it was a clone. It sure seems that way, Eric. That's certainly how I read it. And it makes sense. You know, he can sense that, I mean, from his study and from his incredible connection to the Force. All right, so let's get to chapter 3 real quick. Where and how Rey feels peace on page 31 is completely when she's training and when she's in tune with nature. And it also reveals that she doesn't want to lose her connection with Leia because Leia is what she imagines it must be like to have a mother. So I think that's important too. We also learn about Rey building lightsabers. She's taken Luke's lightsaber from what happened at the end of The Last Jedi, and she's been able to try to fix it based on her ability to tinker and fix things as she learned growing up on Jakku. All of the books that Luke has, all the literature about the Jedi, she was able to use those books and her the Force and just her wherewithal to fix, and it doesn't say heal the Kyber crystal, although I would accept that as a translation, to kind of put it together. Yeah. Mina says, just reading those few pages gave me chills. I could even hear Palpatine's voice. I agree. I mean, seriously, the end of chapter 2 tells you everything you need to know about Palpatine. And then I think there's a great little moment where Connix shows up, and it's mentioned by the narrator and Rey that Connix, who of course in real life is Carrie Fisher's daughter, is wearing Alderaanian blades, Alderaanian blades, something like that. Braids. Wow, easy for me to say. Braids in her hair, like a lot of other women are trying to do. So I think that's really a nice way to say, hey, Princess Leia has a big impact. General Leia has a big impact, and people are emulating her. Women are emulating her by their style of the Alderaan braids, which I think is great. We see Poe and Finn, Ren using Albrecht, a Sith alchemist, to fix his mask, and the description is really metaphorical because it talks about how this mask has been salvaged from the Supremacy's wreckage, and it says it's broken and reformed. So to me, that's a great metaphor. So Kylo Ren's mask is broken and reformed like he has been since he went to the dark side of the Force. He is broken. He's constantly in pain. You know that because of what happened with his father. You know that because of his struggle with Rey, and just how he is always trying to prove himself. And then they point out, Ray Carson points out that his mask is heavier than usual, and I really like that. To me, that's a harbinger that he's getting close to not being in the dark side. Of course, he's got to go through a lot. He's still very much completely evil, so don't get any misunderstandings about that. But the fact that it's heavier than ever shows me that the burden of being Kylo Ren is very, very powerful. It's very, very heavy. So that's it. That's the book study for the first 3 chapters. It was a little more in depth than I thought. It is much easier doing this in a classroom when I can stop and people can raise their hands. And I appreciate the interplay that you guys shared with me throughout this. And while we're doing this, I'll catch it. Feel free to chime in if you have any observations about stuff, because I want to hear your feedback. I don't want it to be just me talking at you. I want us to chat together, because to me, that's what Facebook Live and Coffee with Kenobi is all about. And yes, his saber is unstable too, Eric. It even growls, and I mentioned that to Mason today. In fact, yesterday we were playing with my legacy lightsaber from Galaxy's Edge, 2 of them, and I have the Kylo Ren one. I love the growl that it makes. It's just so powerful. So what do you think? Do you want to keep doing this? Do you want to get through all the Rise of Skywalker? I mean, you can let me know in the comments, or let me know in the comments here, or email me, or put it on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube. If you want to keep doing it, we'll do it. I say next week we go we'll do chapter 4 and 5 next week. We'll try to do a less chapter. We could do this over Zoom. That's true. But it's nice to have it for the Facebook Live too. So that's really that's interesting, Eric. Interesting idea. Maybe that could be something else too. Says, yeah, it's a good book. Colby says, love to keep it. All right, thank you. I just want to do things that are entertaining and interesting for you. Again, just like Coffee with Kenobi's mantra, we want to make you think, we want to make you laugh, we want to get you to look at Star Wars in a whole new way. There's a lot more we could say. I took a lot of notes here on this, but sometimes there's certain key things that are, I think, more important to point out than others. So let's read chapters 4 and 5 for next week of the Rise of Skywalker. Keep your ideas coming. If you think of something, as we're finishing tonight or later this week that you want to bring up about chapters 1, 2, and 3, please do. I mean, I would certainly love to address that as well, for sure. All right, so Minta says the same thing. It's be great to continue the book next week. Then that is exactly what we'll do. Let's look at chapters 4 and 5 for next week. So we've got a few minutes left. Is there anything you want to ask me about what we just read, about future ideas for things, about Star Wars, anything? I'm happy to weigh in for sure. Just let me know, because I love talking Star Wars with each and every one of you. And I agree, Minta, I love hearing other people's viewpoints. I think that is so important. We've got a really smart community, Star Wars community. I'm very happy that you have shared your talents and abilities here on Coffee with Kenobi. I definitely want to hear what you have to think about this. Definitely feel free to weigh in. So do you have any questions before we end tonight's show? Tara says, what would your rebel call sign be? Interesting question. Well, I kind of like blue. Blue's my favorite color, so maybe I'd be blue 5 or blue 23. That'd be cool because 23 is my favorite number. What about you, Tyler? What would yours be? You think they'll continue the story after the Rise of Skywalker? I do. I think they're going to let it kind of marinate a while and sort of decide what they're going to do with the next films. But I do think we're going to see more about that. I was just thinking about that, actually. Do you drink a soda after the latest pour over? Colby? I did, brother. It's so bad. I was so good. I only had 2 since March. And then we talked about those sodas. And then I went that week. And there's a local hardware store, Ace Hardware Store. And they have glass bottles of soda. So that's the picture you see on the CWK pour over advertising. And I bought 2 bottles of Dr. Pepper in glass, a grape soda, a root beer, and a Sun Drop. And I only had I had a root beer and a cinnamon Coke. I just downed them right away without even thinking about it. I'm like, oh man, I ruined it. So I gotta get myself right. But I couldn't resist, man. And in the actual bottle, it's so good. Kurt likes Fresca too. All right, well there you go, Corey. Eric says I want to see what happened to Rey. I do too. I definitely do, and I think that we will. I want to see what happened and finalize what happens with her lightsaber. I didn't mention that while she talks about fixing Luke's lightsaber, she's also working on hers, but it takes a long time when you don't have someone concrete there to teach you. Green 21. Green's my favorite color, and I was born on April 21st. Oh, I like that, Tyler. That's really cool. Gotta run bedtime. All right, Kurt, I understand, buddy. Happy to have you. See you next week for sure. Absolutely. Blake says, do you think the next one will go along with the High Republic era? I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, they want to see kind of how the books go before they decide where they're going to go with that. That's just, again, my opinion, but I don't know. Is Boba holding Vader hostage on your shelf? No, it's kind of the perspective. It just happens to be that way. There you go. There you go. Does that help? No, he's definitely not holding him hostage. Just I couldn't find a good ways to play. So these are the original maquettes that they did for the original trilogy. Really, I got some other ones too. I'll probably kind of alternate putting them back there. Very, very good. Blake, do you think they will? Would you like to see it? I guess it'll be hard to know, especially since we have to wait till January now to see these books, but I'm definitely looking forward to them. I cannot wait. Speaking of cannot wait, as you probably know, October 20th, 2020 is the Star Wars book written by myself, Pablo Hidalgo, and Cole Horton. It is my first book. It's certainly not the first book written by Pablo and Cole, so I was honored to be able to be a part of that and to write with them. I can't wait to have you all read it. You're going to love it. Gosh, there's so much good stuff to talk about when that book finally comes out. I can't wait for that. Next Monday, again, we're going to read chapters 4 and 5 of The Rise of Skywalker. And for top 5s, I've been holding this one out for a while, but I just want to do it. Let's do our top 5 favorite lightsaber hilts. Not the colors, not the cover crystals, but the hilts themselves. For example, I'll grab one right here. I've got a lot of the small ones, but here's Luke's from Return of the Jedi. This is a 0.45 scale done by Master Replica a couple years ago. So maybe that will be one that you want to pick. Pick your top 5 favorite lightsaber hilts, anything from the movies, the comics, any of that stuff. We're going to do our top 5 favorite lightsaber hilts. This is going to be a hard one for me because I love the lightsaber. So it's going to be fun to kind of pick that. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on Coffee with Kenobi. You can find us each and every week on Facebook Live every Monday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. Listen to the show, Coffee with Kenobi, the podcast. Everywhere you can find podcasts, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, all that good stuff. It's great to have you there. Of course, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Try and get our numbers up on YouTube and on Instagram. So please follow us, like us there, subscribe. That would be great stuff. Thank you, Ross. It was great to have you, my friend. Thank you, Jeff, Eric. Appreciate it. Mary, good to see all of you. Spread the word. If you like Coffee with Kenobi, you like what we're doing here on the show, on the channel, on Facebook Live, please let us know. Blake, much love to you too, brother. Thanks so much for joining me every single week. Colby, you too, my friend on the West Coast. I know, there are a lot of Star Wars lightsaber hilts, so it's going to be hard, but the Force will be strong for us, I know, and we can figure this thing out. So many good ones to choose from. LJ, thanks again for bringing the humor, buddy. May the force be with you, Minta. Have a great week, Mary, as well. This Friday, Mason's birthday turns 7, so be sure to send your birthday wishes my way. I'll be sure to pass them along to him. Have a great week, everybody. And remember, this is the podcast you're looking for.